Part of Creative iMedia R081 is looking at camera shots and camera movement. So we're going to take a look at that now. It also applies to R089, which is creating a digital video sequence. So some of those skills are transferable. If you've done 89, it'll help you with 81. The first shot is low angle. Okay, creates a feeling that the viewer is smaller than the character in the shot. That then infers that the character is more powerful. So you often see this used when you've got sort of an adult talking to a child or somebody who's in authority. The viewer is seen as weaker or smaller. It's why, for example, when you've got Toy Story and Buzz is first introduced, it's taken from below sort of the horizontal line. It's because that makes him appear to be of greater stature than the other toys, more fancy than the other toys. So you take this shot by sort of crouching down effectively and pointing the camera upwards. This is an example from the first Avengers film. This is when Loki's being captured. So it's Loki who's sitting on the floor looking back at the other Avengers who have defeated him. You can see that they're sort of the more powerful characters, especially with the character of the Hulk or Iron Man, who's been instrumental in that. The next shot type then is high angle. This shows that someone is being watched by a more powerful force. Okay, so it's taken from above. It makes the character look vulnerable. So it's a reverse of from the child's perspective. It's from the adult's perspective, for example. It's used in Matilda when Miss Trunchbull's looking down at Matilda. It's often used in thrillers as well to show that someone's being watched. You've got the character who's alone in the house and the camera is at a higher angle than them, watching them move around. This is an example, again from the first Avengers film. It's got Thor and Captain America looking up at what's come down from space. Those big massive centipede type things. It's used to show that they're smaller on the ground, that they're littler in stature and littler in number. You've got the extreme wide angle shot. Okay, it's often called an establishing shot. It's often used at the start of a scene or at the start of a film, and it's used to sort of set that scene. A common camera movement that goes with it is to slowly sort of pan or to zoom into the scene to show that you've come from this, this angle and you're moving into where the action's taken place. It can be used to show the following sorts of things like location, the time of the day, the relationship between characters, so where the character is within a scene or a location, before you move in to look at them speaking to somebody else. The example that I found that shows this really well is from James Bond, and it shows him stood on the top of a building looking out across London. It's sort of setting the scene of the character in Britain, in London, surveying the city. Again, it has him in the shot, and that can happen, so it's showing the relationship of the character to the city in this case. You've got a close-up here. It shows what one person has to say, and it focuses on them. You can have various versions of this. You can have extreme close-ups and close-ups, but in this case it's just a close-up of their face. It doesn't include the wider scene generally. Okay, you might have a little bit of background obviously, but it doesn't show the setting. And it's often combined with camera movement, so zooming in towards that character. And it can focus on the emotion, so their facial expressions, troubled, happy, sad, those kinds of things. This is an example of Iron Man, where it's shown him in a suit talking to other characters or to a suit to do something, and it shows the concentration on his face and his emotions at the scene that he's in. Two shots has two or more characters in it. It could have more than two characters, but it just shows that those characters are equally important in that particular scene. It doesn't mean that they have to be stood exactly side by side. You could have one slightly further forward than the other, but they're still equal. They're still both as important as the other one. This example comes from one of the Harry Potter films. Obviously, Harry and Hermione are both equally important. They're looking at something unfolding in the distance. They are both of concern in this particular scene. The next shot type then is wide angle. It puts the character into their surroundings, so you can see them in context. It generally shows the whole person, so from the top to the bottom of them, and it shows the setting of the scene in reasonable detail compared to some of the other shots. This is an example from Forrest Gump, where he's walking and having a chat, and it just shows the kind of location that they're in while this is taking place. The next shot type then is over the shoulder. It's often used for conversation between two characters, or possibly more than two characters. It contains the face of one character, generally taking up about 2/3 of the screen, and the shoulder and part of the head of another character. And then what happens is that it's shown at that point that one person's speech is more important than the other. So it'll be focusing on the person who is speaking. The person where you can only see part of them, the back of them, is the one who's listening. Location isn't particularly important in this one, so it can end up being quite close up. But it's common to alternate between each person during their speech, depending on who it is at that point that is talking. So you'll see quite a lot of change between this shot. So looking at person A while they're talking, then switching around to looking at person B while they're talking, and so on. So this example here is of Batman talking to the Joker. So at this point, the Joker is the one who is speaking to Batman. He is the most important, and you can see that he takes up 2/3. He takes up most of the right-hand side. Batman is on the left, and all you can see is the back of his head, because it's more important to read the facial expressions and the lips of the Joker who is talking. The next one then is an extreme close-up. It focuses on a single feature of the character. It's seen as an unreal shot because it's drastically exaggerating something. You can focus on hands, eyes, nose, mouth, whatever it is that is needed at that point. And it's used to draw attention to something, to make something much clearer to the audience, to emphasise that importance of an object or an emotion. It might be extremely close in on somebody's eyes as they're starting to cry, to show hurt or vulnerability. So like I say, it is there for that purpose, for the emotion, if necessary. It might be to show a scar on somebody's hand that then becomes important later on as an identifying feature. This is an example from, I think, X-Men, where you've zoomed in on the character's eyes. It shows their concentration, their intense focus, which is obviously important as they're going to some sort of battle. Some other useful sources then are detailed here for you. Just be careful when you're doing research on these, because the names of certain shots can change based on whether it's a particular media source or it's an American site or an English site. The names that I've used are the ones that are on OCR's website under their storyboarding lesson. And what I've done is included that link at the bottom for you.